Good evening and welcome. Rugby is our national sport, and last week during the Vodafone Super Deans Rugby Championship, we saw a wealth of new and upcoming talent at secondary school level of the sport. But what makes high school rugby tick? We'll find out tonight on the show, and we have with us Mr. Biodalati, the Vice President of Development at the Fiji Secondary Schools Rugby Union, or for the purposes of this show, the FSSRU, and Mr. Waisake Tuidakau, Secretary of the FSSRU. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. So this year was another great rugby championship. We'll call it the Deans because it's quite a mouthful to say. So talk to us about how the competition went this year. How was it for you?
You know, for our for the executive committee of Fiji Secondary School, preparation for the Dean starts off from when the zone competition kicks off, and midway through that, our team that looks after the Dean's competition sits in, which we call the Games Committee. They start meeting and looking at all the logistics of the game, because it's quite a massive game as far as we're concerned. It's quite a big game, and it touches almost all the divisions of the education in Fiji. So we are talking about the four education divisions that we have. And we have 4 zones, which is the southern zone in Suva, the whole of Suva. And we've got the eastern zone, which covers Tailevu and Novalau. And then we've got this massive one, which is western zone, starting from Serua right up to Ra, all that area. And we have the fourth one, which is the northern zone. These are the only 2 zones, the western and the northern zone, that have got subzones. And both of them have got, northern zone has got 4 subzones, while western zone has got, I think, 1 more subzone. So when we go into this, the preparation for the Deans, I'm not talking about the zone competition. The zone competition is taken over by the zone committees that are elected by the zones. When we go into this preparation for the Deans, looking at the scope of the schools that take part in this competition, we are talking about the zonal matters as well, and also looking forward to particular events that we need to emphasize on. For example, our 80th anniversary this year, that was something that the Games Committee had to take on. So, when we stand back and then look at the Deans when it has concluded, looking at this issue right from the beginning to the end, I could say that it was a big success.
We'd like to thank you for making FBC your exclusive media partners on radio and on TV. And we'd just like to get your views on what was different this time around for the Dean's competition, especially with it being held in Lawanga Park after such a long lapse.
Yeah, Fiji Secondary School has gone through lots of changes. There's lots of reviews that we've done since we came into the executive committee. We had so many reviews done just to try and to be in par with what is happening. For example, at one time, this competition was just exclusively for schools. When I say exclusively for schools, you can't get any outsider to even come and coach. Right. No? Now that has changed. Now you could see outsiders coming in. And because the provisions that they are already there with the Ministry of Education to allow an outsider to come is already there. All they need to do is fulfill those and come in. So all outside coaches have to go and register themselves and come into school. So it's very simple. So the systems were there, but we were not utilizing those. So that's what I said. When we reviewed the games, the whole structure that we had, these are some of the changes that we brought in. And another one was where the games were to be held. One of the changes that we brought in also was that, previously in our rules of competition, this game will, two of the finals will be played in Suva, and only one can be taken to the West. We had to scrap that out too, so that we could be a little bit more flexible. If ANZ says no, due to some reason, if we were using the old rules, we would be in a bad situation, So when we did away with that, that's how we were able to take the two games to Lawanga. It was just because of increasing the flexibility through changing our rules of competition.
I mean, it's a historically significant event as well, right? 80 years, I'm guessing. And we would like to talk about, some of the ways that it has developed in the coming segments. But just on the history itself, I mean, we were talking before we started the show with Mr. Dolati, and I'm sure you'll agree, Mr. Tudekao, in saying that it is, in fact, a family affair. And it becomes, a matter of national interest whenever the Deans is up. So why do you think this is? What is it about the Deans that attracts so many people, Mr. Tudekao?
Yes, I think it's about everyone is related to a school, and especially when the kids are playing for the lower grade, in terms of under 14 and under 15. It's not only the family that is coming to watch the place. We also have the extended family. Even for some family, we've heard that they were hiring a bus just to come and watch their child play. So that's where the most support is coming on for the lower grade, especially in the under 14, 15, and 16.
And there's widespread support, I mean, throughout the nation, right? In what ways have you seen this support, coming out, especially this year?
Yeah, when we sit down and talk about support, one of the partners that we always try to thank is the media. These people have really made our games big because they've taken, even when they criticize us, in a way they are doing mileage for the game. And that's how we become exposed more, because once we are put on hot seats, that's where people start talking a lot. So if they talk about me, they're talking about rugby and the Deans. And then the support that comes from the old scholars, that's a massive one. Every child that goes through a school, some for just a year, as soon as the school wins, they start, they try and associate themselves back into the school. And not just them, these old scholars that get married, the whole family seems to now come behind the father who went to a prominent rugby playing school. And then the children, those that are still in primary school, they look up to the school that their father went to, or their grandfather went to. So, and because it's a very old game, it started off in 1939. Over these years, it has built up lots of followers, and we are just enjoying the fruits of the history of this competition.
And I note that you spoke about criticism in the lead up to the competition. A major newspaper ran a story about the ticket prices, and when we come back from break, we'd like some clarification on that. Stay with us. Mr. Tudekao, in the lead up to the Dean's competition this year, one of the major newspapers ran a story about how the ticket prices were comparable to that of a regional game. So is the $30 ticket, in your opinion, justified? The current ticket prices, are they justified?
Yeah, I believe the ticket price was there from the last 3 years. That was our normal ticket prices. Our grandstand was sold at $30. With embankment at $10, and we also have accommodated for students in uniform with $5 and those at under 12. It has started from 2016, 2017, even last year, and this year. Maybe there's just a change in venue, or there's the PNC, which is also going around where they compared our Dean's prices with PNC. But from Fiji Secondary School perspective, we have been charging the same fee. There's no increase. And also take into account that we have 7 quality games. So that's the final of the Deans, and it's a super Deans competition. Even when we invited our Prime Minister as the chief guest way back in 2017, when the same prize was there, he alluded that this was like watching Super 15. Okay. So our prizes were from the last 3 years were the same as this year.
Well, interesting, like you said, it's a full day's competition. There's so many different matches, different grades and everything. And in comparison to, cost of matches and the price of the tickets, $30 for one match and then $30 for a full day, it makes sense. Talk to us also about interest in the game. It's also sort of skyrocketed this year around. I know for a fact you're from opposing the schools, you're old boys. But getting interest to stay in a healthy environment without it escalating into violence, how did that work out for you?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, when we get this games committee to sit in, well before the beginning of the quarterfinals, in this game committee, the games committee, we have a representative from the police, a representative from the Ministry of Labour to look after OHS. We have representatives from the venue owners, so Sports Council was there. We also have representatives from Fiji Rugby, since they were going to give us the go-ahead. And then, of course, we have doctors who is represented in that meeting, the games committee, plus us. These are the experts that advise us on what to do and how to do things. So when it comes to Dean's competition, believe me, we have a mini hospital set up there at the ENZ Stadium or wherever we go. So injuries, most of the injuries that happen in the rugby field are treated right there and then. So during the quarterfinals, we had 6 doctors, we had about 6 nurses, and 6 physiotherapists, all not including our St. John's and the ambulance, of course. And our OHS officer was full-time, just going around the complex, even though the complex was a certified one, but they still went, they even visited toilets, and they were reporting to us when the surface was wet, or if someone is sitting where they were not supposed to be sitting, steps and all. And we would address it right there and then. And then we had the police out there in numbers, and since they were part of our games committee, everything was just running, it was just run by one organization. But for someone from outside, we'll see that there are police and Ministry of Youth, Health, and all those different organizations. But according to us, it's just run by one committee, because the ones representing all these, they belong to one committee. So it made things very easy. It made things very safe for us. And I think that's how we could maintain it at that level.
And I mean, this year was, in fact, the first time that the FSSRU has come under the wing of the Fiji Rugby Union, right? And this is a relationship that I'm very interested in, because it seems, with the general outlook of the competition, that things did seem to run smoothly in terms of the competition. But then what happened, internally is something that not a lot of people know. So talk to us about how smooth it was for the Fiji Secondary Schools Rugby Union to come under the wing of FRU. Do you see it as a positive move? Do you see it as something that will better the competition in the coming years?
No, when we were elected into the executive committee of Fiji Secondary Schools, in one of our first meetings, we passed that we wanted to be affiliates of FRU. So the move to come to FRU was actually our move. So we came to CO, and we sat with CO and we said, we believe, as the executives of Fiji Secondary School, that we are supposed to be running under you, the umbrella of FRU. Because we are not rugby in Fiji. We are just it's like we are just an association. The mother body is always going to be the mother body. So we thought, let's go back to our mother body and let's be affiliated. So we started doing what an affiliate would do. And but before that, Fiji Secondary School was already working with FRU. It was just that formalization maybe that took place this year. But otherwise, over these years, I believe that we had already been, you can't do anything in rugby without informing FRU. And we've been doing lots of things, which means that we have been liaising with FRU. But nothing was formalized as we could know. I mean, but now things are formalized, and I think we're enjoying the partnership.
Well, let's look at development. This is crucial in terms of getting our young stars of tomorrow up to the point where they can be handpicked into places that'll give them international stardom. Earlier on, off camera, Mr. Tudakau had mentioned how we have one of our Fiji stars actually out there playing for the Wallabies, and how he has mentioned that he played for your former school, Nasinu, and he played in the Dean's Final himself, and from there on he's moved up. Talk to us about developmental stages and how you deal with trying to encourage better, I suppose, better coaching, better players, better refereeing, and all of that in secondary schools. It can be quite a burden sometimes, I believe.
Yes, currently we are using the assistance of FRU with the development officers and Oceania Rugby to upskill our coaches. So once we upskill our coaches into level 1 and level 2, I think the standard of coaching and development is improved, which is evident now in how the students were playing in their respective teams. Even this year we have seen that some of the schools, this is the first time for them to come into the Dean's quarterfinal. So even after the Dean's quarterfinal, we have seen that the prizes were shared equally instead of one school dominating in all the grades.
Right. And I mean, this is something, development in itself is the entire purpose why you have competitions like these at secondary school level. And development is something that we would like to look into more, but that's coming up right after the break. So, when we talk about a rugby championship, there's a lot that goes on. There's so many aspects to handle. But, you have to admit that one of the most important things is the match itself. These are teams that are comprised of students that are still learning. And for that, you need referees, you need coaches. That means you need the human resource, the skill level. Do you think that secondary schools throughout Fiji have this? Do you think that it's something that needs to be developed further?
I think right now, one thing that we lack in Fiji is the referees. We have been told by the Referees Association that they really lack referees. So what we have decided, secondary schools have decided to do, is to come up with a Referees Association, because as an affiliate and a union in Fiji Rugby, we should have our own Referees Association. So what we've done is we have already agreed in our executive meeting that we are going to see to the formation of the Teachers Rugby Teachers Referees Association. This will include teachers that are still being trained to become teachers. We will also take on our students in school that are still in the under 19 grade, and any other teacher in any school that wants to come in to be part of refereeing. We would like to take on that and form. We've already chosen all our former teachers that were also referees to look into this, and of course the funding will come from Fiji Secondary Schools Rugby. So we're going to see to the formation of that Referees Association. So that's number one. As far as coaching is concerned, I think Master Tudakau has mentioned this. The last one that we had, we were able to trained 206 teachers across. We would like to repeat that. It had started earlier this year, but we would like to continue with it and upskill more teachers. Upskilling is something different. To accreditation. No, we've upskilled so many, but it's the end result that we are not getting.
The accreditation.
Yeah, I mean 206. But if you ask how many have been accredited, that's another thing.
So, unless I'm wrong, you had mentioned, Mr. Tudekau, that most are at level 1, and surprisingly, one of the referees comes from Bar Provincial Freebird Institute, who's just recently been accredited level 2.
Level 2 for
Coach.
Mm-hmm. So, talk to us about the accreditation process. How does that happen? Is it done locally? Do you get someone else to come in and assess them?
Is it a lengthy process?
No, the accreditation is not complicated. It's finishing the task, before you can be accredited is something that that's what we are not achieving, and that's what we would like to know. If we need to go down and help our teachers to achieve that, then that's what we will want to undertake to, so that they get accredited. Because 206 were trained. To date, I think it's less than 4 that have been accredited, and that's it's a waste of time and money if we go through the same process again, knowing that only 4 will eventually graduate.
Right.
So we want to do something within here, so that more graduates. That's what I'm trying to say.
Let's look at coaching, because it's very important to have a head coach that is going to be able to completely get the children or all these kids up to the point where they can really shine. Their raw potential is fully utilized. But is there anything in place already, or any plans in place to get a standardized coaching level as well in secondary schools?
Yeah, we already know the standards are set by World Rugby and FRU. So once they set a standard, we just have to comply. And that's the standard they have set. With to be accredited, these are the things that you have to do. Our teachers are just not able to do certain parts of these so that they can be accredited. And sometimes the accrediting, because 206, and if you have only 1 or 2 accrediting officers, then it becomes a huge task. I'm just talking about teachers. We are not even mentioning the ones that have been trained from provincials, So it's a huge task that these officers at FRU are doing. Yeah, so that's what we would like to revisit, and maybe we could help each other, so that we could graduate more of our teachers to become coaches, and then we will want to go back and do a little bit of more of coaching clinics to increase our numbers. And lastly, we also would like to do some administration courses. Having a team without a good manager is not going to be a good thing, So we would like our managers to be trained administrators, managers, so that they manage the team well. So these are the things that we would like to undertake this year, coming to before we reach the new season.
Mr. Tudekau, what are some of the changes that you would like to see for more referees and coaches to complete that accreditation requirement? What do you think needs to be done?
Yes, I think to be accredited level 2, all the coaches need to do is to prepare a diary. After they've completed a diary, then an assessor will come to assess them before they are given level 2. And I think most of our coaches are stuck there at level 1, not submitting their diary. So once they submitted the diary, the assessor from FRU or Senior Rugby will come in to assess them. And that's when they will get the level 2 accredited.
So when we go down to the actual, the team levels, these schools, you mentioned earlier that there's a heavy involvement from old scholars as well. How important do you think this involvement is in terms of resources, support networks, in terms of expertise as well? How important do you think this support is?
Our rules of competition says that to coach a team, you have to be accredited coach. Okay. Now, when we are not able to deliver accredited coaches amongst us teachers, this is where these old scholars come in. The old scholars are the ones that are able to bring in qualified accredited coaches from outside. And if they need to be paid, it's them they pay, not the school. So our old scholars are very critical when it comes to this, because they are the ones that they can hire anyone that they want to, but accredited person, and they are the ones that will work with the school to get the person to be registered under our FTRA to be able to enter schools. Yeah, so all scholars play a vital role when it comes to the Dean's competition.
I mean, I see that as an advantage for schools that have a strong rugby network in place. Let's say, for example, QVS and RKS. But, I mean, you would understand how that may disadvantage some schools that don't have such a strong old scholar network. Let's say, for example, if some, schools have a team that's up and coming, they're the underdogs in the competition, and they don't have a very good old scholar network, they don't have access to these resources. Do you think that would become a disadvantage for them? Do you think resources is an issue for smaller schools, for less developed schools?
I believe development-wise, outside expertise have improved the performance of teams. So credit goes to them because they have lifted the standard of the competition to another level by allowing outside expertise to come and assist teams. But I'm sure in whichever school or community, there is someone there who is accredited, level 2 or level 3, which are willing to come and assist. It entirely depends on the team management. Sometimes the team management, the teachers will not allow outside expertise. So if they are willing to, then outside help are always there, because our rules of competition also allows that.
Interesting to note, in the past 80 years, it's been dominated quite heavily by just a few schools, and most of them happen to be predominantly boys' schools. This year you had an under-19 grades for girls, and we'd like to look at the possibility of introducing more schools, maybe possibly different grades for girls as well, under 14 or under 15 for girls. As we know, in Fiji, rugby does not see gender, and we have girls who are also interested in rugby. What are your plans for that?
Yeah, in the memorandum that we signed this year with FRU, one of the things that we were reminded of was to involve more females to play rugby, since we are calling ourselves Fiji Secondary School, and Fiji Secondary School has got about half of the population, males and females there. But we tend to be looking only at the males, and we already know that we are a little bit biased on that, and we really want to change that. So next year, what we want to do is we are encouraging all the zones to get someone into the zone executives to specifically look at the female rugby. And then we at the executive level would like to get someone also to come in and sit with us just to look after the women's rugby. And we have got plans in place to make their competition a big competition. No, I mean, if we are just tapping on half of the population and half is still there, I mean, that's an opportunity for us already, which we are already planning to work with, and these are some of the things that we've already put in place. So maybe in our next executive meeting, which is just coming up soon, this is probably going to be one of the agendas that we are going to endorse, and we would like to see it moving.
We'll have more for you right after the break. So this year, a Memorandum of Understanding was signed between the FSSRU and the FRU, and we spoke about it in one of our earlier segments as well. So I'd just like to know the schematics of this Memorandum of Understanding. What does it entail, and how is it bound to benefit the FSSRU?
Yeah, thank you. With this new MOU, we have worked our relationship and partnership more closely than compared to other previous year, where we were running on our own. And also with FRU coming in, they have brought in our new sponsor, Vodafone, with Vodafone coming in with a much more a larger sum of money compared to what we used to have. So Fiji Secondary School is benefiting in terms of sponsorship and in partnership with FRU in terms of technical expertise and the sponsorship, increase in sponsorship.
I mean, both of you have been involved in the Deans for a number of years, right? And I think you'll agree with me when you say that FSSRU did have, in the previous years, some form of autonomy. Do you see that autonomy being handed over to the FRU, or does the FSSRU still have a lot of influence on how the competition progresses in general?
Yeah, that's what we initially thought when we were going into signing. We thought that FRU, that's why it took us long to agree to this, because we thought FRU was going to take over everything, but that's not the case. We seem to be operating like what we used to do before. The only thing is, we now know that there are so many support there with us now. I mean, FRU is always there to support us in whatever that we need, and that's what we needed long time ago. And then, as I said earlier on, I think we are enjoying the partnership.
Well, speaking of enjoying things, one thing is definitely for sure. The moment anyone mentions Sevens rugby, you just have people just going all up in arms, talking about who their favorite player is, which school they went to, and in that regards, are there any major plans for developing Sevens in secondary schools as well?
Yeah, we already have plans in place, and it's good that when we were talking to development manager at FRU, we had the same thought, that we were going to have a series of sevens played amongst the schools. That should be done in term one. We would like to do that in term one. So we'll have series played all around Fiji. And the only thing that we will need to sit and talk about with FRU is how many legs are we going to be playing, and where we're going to be having this, and the grades that has to come through Fiji Secondary Schools Executive as well. Yeah, so the skeleton of this plan is already in place. The only thing that we need to do now is just to throw in a little bit more so that it becomes a real good plan to. Because why I'm mentioning FRU is that Sevens has no sponsors yet. We only have sponsors for 15s, and Sevens is not an easy thing to run. It costs us just to have it in Suva. We need to be ready with more than $70,000 just to run the secondary schools Sevens. So it's quite a big amount that we need to come up with. But it's a good. It is going to be a good thing to, because we have schools in secondary schools that call themselves secondary schools but cannot come up with a 15th team, but they can come up with a 7th team because lesser number of students.
Right.
Yeah, and we have to take care of this because they are part of our secondary schools. So it's part of our work. We need to see that they also play rugby.
Well, we're hoping that everything works out for the FSSRU and that these plans do start off ASAP, because everyone's going to be looking forward to that. Speaking of the kids that are playing, you mentioned very specifically that they are secondary school students, and of course there's a lot of dangers with having kids exposed on a national level to fame or notoriety, depending on how it plays out for them. How does the FSSRU deal with disciplinary action, or also ensuring that it doesn't get to the point where children need to be disciplined for their actions?
Yeah, our rules of competition already captures those. If anything that is captured in our rules of competition is violated, we are not quite lenient to anyone on that. And apart from that, there is also a set of rules that is set out by World Rugby, which is attached to our, as I was alluding to before, our rules of competition is based on the under-19 variation. So we are very much part of the rules of rugby that is played in the world. So they also have their rules on
The
on
codes of
violations.
conduct.
Yeah. So if there's any misconduct on anything, including drugs or punch up or anything, it's all addressed in there, and the penalties are quite severe. That's not, but there are no such thing as no swearing and all those kind of things. That is captured under our rules of competition. Yeah. So I don't see any anywhere where a player can go unnoticed through the rules that we already have. We have the World Rugby rule, and we also have the secondary schools rules, and to violate any of these, the penalties are quite severe.
Are there any instances of abuse that were reported during this year's competition?
Unfortunately, we had only one during the semi-finals, incident, but that was out of our hand because it was not, that was handled by the police. Okay. Apart from that, as far as the behavior of the crowd control and all those, it was just, no, we were really happy with the outcome. There was no such thing as that.
Well,
So this week we enjoyed a good week of Catty Rugby as well, and we'd love to discuss that when we come back from the break with our final segment right after this. So gentlemen, we wrapped up Catty Rugby this week. Pretty exciting week. For you, how was it organizing the event? And how far do you see Catty Rugby going, especially for the students, the young students that are involved?
Yes, we have to give credit to the Catty executive because from them it's a pathway from primary school rugby, and then they're coming on to the secondary school rugby. I think like when we have the deans, we have people from overseas coming to get into recruit players.
Right.
So likewise too, I think some secondary schools will be there, or kids already looking forward to which secondary school they will want to attend. Maybe a lot have already been eyeing to attend QVS because they have already won the deans. So credit goes to the Catty executive for this year. They're going to have a 4-day tournament, which shows that there's an increased number of teams, and to the level of development they're also carrying down there. And we are happy to that they're having tag rugby from the lower grades,
Right.
from under 9 to under 11, and only rugby with tackling and all, starting from the under 12 to under 14. So we'll see that there's alignment and coordination instead of getting players coming up and getting injured players right in the lower grade. So now we see that we'll have players coming in with just tag rugby, and then coming on to under 12 to under 14 with real rugby.
I mean, since we're bringing a lot of the issues to a head in our final segment, I guess it's a pertinent question, both for high school and primary school rugby as well. In terms of, I mean, as Vice President Development, where do you see high school and school rugby going perhaps 10 years down the line?
You know, one of the things that that is very clear now, and I should give all this credit to Fiji Rugby Union. No, the pathway has never been clearer to these kids before. Now, when a primary school child leaves primary school, the child now can either go into any of the secondary schools that play rugby, either taken in by the school or just the child going to that school. So if the child goes up to a secondary school and starts playing rugby there, the child knows very well now where he or she will end up to, because now we have a national under-19 in place. So within the school system, they can either be drafted into the national under-16, and most of these people here end up playing in the national under 18, and then they appear in our national under 19. And of course, you know, we have the national under 20. And then after the national under 20, then we have these Ndrua and all these teams that take on the journey from there before they even reach the Flying Fijians. And then to make it even more interesting, you must have seen that some of our under 18s have made it right across to the sevens teams. We've just been informed that one just made it across to the Ndrua. Now, these openings, you know, makes it even more interesting to our kids that are coming up. Now they know and they could even see that opportunity in rugby is a reality, apart from going overseas.
So just to wrap this up, of course, with rugby, what happens is, unfortunately, players do happen to have a very short lifespan. Their shelf life is very short. They peak very early. And for secondary school rugby, if a kid or a child makes it to the point where they become a national or a household name, how do you, as the FSSRU, step in to make sure that their welfare is still maintained in the terms of their playing career and also their education and their personal lives?
You know, one of the things that we have been informed, I was asking some of the teams, I wanted to see some of the students that I saw in Term 1 playing rugby league. I said, where is this child? Most of them told me that that child is not playing because of a disciplinary issue. You know? This is very serious when it comes to schools. And maybe it could be a warning also to those that have been chosen to be our under 18s and our under 19s. Through indiscipline, they can be dropped. No? Simple as that. So they should maintain discipline at all times, because now they've been chosen to be role models. Forget about being a national team now. You are now a role model to all the children that are looking up to you. And that goes with lots of responsibility. And they should be reminded of that all the time. And I think Fiji Secondary School will not be lenient to when it comes to that. If someone violates, no, it has to be addressed rightly.
Mr. Talati, Mr. Tidikau, we thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a great discussion and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight on the show, and remember to keep supporting local rugby. We'll see you next week. Good evening.